Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is another Lunch with Lisa. I think it's been a week or two since I've been live, so it is wonderful to see everybody. And I hope you had a lovely, lovely holiday, a great Thanksgiving, and all. Uh, Actually, it's been a while, maybe 2 weeks since Thanksgiving, but I think that's how long it's been since I've actually been on. But it is lovely to see you all. This is holiday season. So, we're doing the best we can over here. All right. Today we have a great topic. I am very excited about this. And it's what constitutes a deal breaker. And I think that this is really, really, really a great topic for exploration. I think that many of us have too many deal breakers. And not only do we have too many deal breakers, but we have lists of criteria that we're looking for in a partner. And we look at those criteria and we think, we have a very fixed idea about how things are supposed to look. The guy we're looking for, the kind of job he's going to have, how old he is, where he lives, what kind of car he drives. We have all of these deal breakers, these things that we're trying to fit this guy into a box. If I had done that with my husband, we wouldn't be together. If I had fit him into a box and tried to get him, to line up with all of the things I thought I was looking for in a partner or should have, he broke the mold in a lot of different ways. So what I've learned in retrospect, and I think, I really want you all to put a frame around what I'm about to say. What I have learned is that you have to have your idea of what you want, and then you have to hold it very lightly, and you have to be willing to examine it and ask, and check in with yourself and allow room for things to appear different than you expect them to. So I was doing a group, running one of my groups, and this is the second tier level. So people go through my initial course. It's called Emotionally Naked Dating, and it is the very first part of my program. And then this was the second tier. The women that go through the first 12-week course, they sometimes want to continue working with my husband and me. And so they go into a group called SSW, the Sisterhood of Self-Actualized Women. And in that group, there were some women who had met the guardians of their souls. They'd done my program and they'd met their guys, and they were, and so I called on them and I asked them, I said, I want to hear from all the women in the group who have met their guys. Are they anything like you expected them to be? Is the guy that you wound up with like the man that you actually thought you would wind up with? And across the board, every single one of these women said no. He was very, very different. He was really a surprise and not at all what they were expecting. And I think that this is true, that we have this idea that we form over time of who this man will be. And then the guy that we wind up with is actually very, very, very different than that guy. I had a friend when I was studying with Don Miguel Ruiz, the author of The Four Agreements. I had a friend, a woman I met, in my work with Don Miguel, and she was, I think, a doctor of some kind. I don't know if she was a podiatrist or what her specialty was, but she was telling me that she divorced her husband and then she came up with all of these criteria. This is the guy that I'm looking for. This is the man that I want to find. And she said, I found that guy. She said, I found him. I mean, he fit the bill perfectly on paper. And she said, I realized he was nothing like the man I really wanted to be with. He didn't have the heart. He didn't have he wasn't evolved enough, and there were all these things she thought she wanted: education, how much money he made, all of these things, what kind of profession he would be in. And she found him, and he was really not the right guy for her. So when it came to my husband, Benjamin, he blew me out of the water the first time I met him. I had no idea if he was my guy, if we were going to spend our lives together, if there was even enough alignment for the two of us to want to build a future together. And what I started to see was I loved the way this man made me feel. I loved the way he made me feel. As I got to know him, there were things that in the past would have been absolute no's for me. He didn't own his own home. He drove like a 10-year-old Acura, there were all kinds of things, not just all of these things that were different from what I expected. He was a doctor. He had a doctorate, but he was a body worker. And while, I have subsequently found out that he, does very, very well for himself, and he is incredibly well respected in his field, I would have never, ever, ever thought that I would be with a body worker. He's not a chiropractor. He was trained initially as a rolfer, which is an alternative, form of body work. And he's made it his own. He's world renowned. He's one of the best in the world at what he does. But that wasn't on my list of careers that I thought, oh, I'm going to look for a rolfer or a body worker. My image of body workers were that they wore khaki pants and Birkenstocks, and they lived frugally, and they were kind of crunchy granola. So I didn't even think that there could be a body worker who had a career like his, or who was as successful. He also teaches all over the world. So he was a complete surprise. And what I thought would have been deal breakers, I actually found, and this is the part I want you to put a frame around. I found that there were qualities that Benjamin has that were qualities I was looking for, but they actually showed up differently than what I had expected. So at the time when I was dating, I was getting my master's degree in spiritual psychology, and Benjamin, it turns out, had written one of the books that we read for my course. It was uncanny that he had written one of the books that was a required reading. It was called Handbook for the Heart. But I was looking for a man who was spiritual. And my definition of what spiritual meant was, somebody that would meditate and would talk about spiritual subjects and would sit with me, and we would contemplate the meaning of the universe and have, deep conversations about meaningful spiritual things. And what I realized was, when I met Benjamin, was that he was actually the most spiritual person I've ever met, and he has no spiritual path. None. He doesn't have a spiritual path at all. In fact, on our first date, I asked him, I said, do you have a spiritual path? And he literally started to short circuit. And he started batting his eyes and looking around the room. And, and I sat there and I thought, oh my God, I've asked the stupidest question known to man, like on a date that you could ever ask. Like, oh, do you meditate? Do you have a spiritual practice? What's your zodiac sign? And I thought, oh, I just blew it. He must think that, I'm one of those girls. And once he stopped batting his eyes and looking around the room, he looked at me and he said, I don't have a spiritual practice. He said, I just, all I can tell you is I wrote 4 books and they were on spiritual questions, because I was contemplating these questions and I wanted to really learn about them. And so what he did was he and his best friend at the time came up with these 4 spiritual questions. And they wrote these books over like 10 years. And they were able to interview some of the preeminent thinkers in that time on these 4 questions. So they were looking at, they wrote one called Handbook for the Heart, Handbook for the Soul, Handbook for the Spirit, and Healers on Healing was actually the first one. So with Healers on Healing, they went to all these healers and they interviewed some of the most famous people in the world on healing. And he really explored these subjects by talking to these deep thinkers he went right to the sources. So they interviewed Mother Teresa and the Dalai Lama, Marianne Williamson. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. You couldn't name, a new age, new thought person from that time when they wrote the books that they didn't interview. And these books were amazing. And I read one of them before our first date, about a month and a half before. But what was so remarkable about this is, as I got to know Benjamin, he is the true definition, the living, breathing, walking, talking definition of what it means to be spiritual. So Benjamin doesn't have to sit around and talk about being spiritual. He just is. He's humble, he's generous, he's kind, he's thoughtful, he's compassionate, he's caring. So he walks the talk. He's not reading books about how to become more spiritual. He just has embodied and embraced those qualities in his own life. So when we look at deal breakers, I would be very, very, very careful that you don't have fixed ideas that are so fixed in your mind that you don't sit down across from a wonderful man like my husband, who really isn't somebody you can put in a box, and miss what's really in front of you. Another thing that I learned, that would have been a deal breaker in the past for me, that was actually a surprise with Benjamin, was his kind of masculinity. My dad was a very narcissistic man. He had a huge personality. He was bigger than life. And I thought, that's what masculinity looked like. Somebody who was loud and had big opinions and whatever. And when I met Benjamin, here's this man who is soft-spoken. He uses few words. He doesn't even speak a lot. He thinks, he goes inside. When he does speak, everybody in the room will get quiet and listen to him. But he is such a deep thinker that, and he's so deeply masculine, but there's no bravado. And what I had seen as being masculine was bravado. And I think that that's what a lot of women look for. A lot of women are looking for bravado and men who are arrogant, and we see like take charge and whatever, these qualities that we define as being masculine. And Benjamin is actually the most masculine man I've ever seen, except that he's also the most heartfelt. And so he has this very, very defined masculine side to him. And what I learned by observing a man like him, who truly is so integrated in all the, in so many ways, what I learned from Benjamin was that a truly masculine man doesn't have to throw his weight around. He doesn't have to be the biggest, loudest voice in the room or the most opinionated. He can be the man who speaks softer, who talks less, but who has something to really say. And when a person is truly humble, when there's real humility, there's nothing to prove. And so there, you have a man who just isn't throwing his weight around and he doesn't have to prove anything. And when I talk to Benjamin, I know he's just in a league of his own. And so why am I sharing all of this? Because we have all of these deal breakers. And the truth is, we don't sit across from people and just let them show us who they are. Let them really show us who they are by the things they say, with how they're being, with how they show up. And we have all of these preconceived notions, these deal breakers, this box, these boxes that we're trying to check off. And the truth is, we have such fixed ideas of what we think we want that we very often sit across from people, from men on dates, and there's this person who has so much to offer us, and we're just missing it. We don't see it because we're too busy trying to check off those boxes. So what constitutes a real deal breaker? Who knows? I'd love to hear from some of you. What would be a real deal breaker for you? And I challenge this. By the way, one of the things I do with my clients, which I actually have a lot of fun with, is I love challenging conventional dating wisdom. And I love, love, love challenging their deal breakers. So a lot of the women who come into my course, they'll say, if a guy hasn't written anything in his profile, next. If a guy doesn't, I'm trying to think of some, if he's not 6 feet tall, if he doesn't have a certain kind of career, if he doesn't make a certain amount of money, deal breakers. I'm curious what some of your deal breakers are. And I'm curious to know, what constitutes a deal breaker for you. So I'd love to hear from some of my listeners about these things. I'd love to hear about some deal breakers that you all have. So anybody want to share any of these? What constitutes? All right, so let's see here. Okay, I think not getting along with their family is a deal breaker for me. So, Katie, just to give you some background here, I don't, most of my relatives are gone. I have one brother and I don't communicate with him. So, you could say that I don't get along with my family. And that may be a deal breaker for you. I found that for me, I had to draw those clear lines. So Dorothy says, everyone trying to find that perfect one. We are trying too hard, maybe. Yeah, I think so, Dorothy. I think many of us are trying too hard just to find that perfect person. And what I learned for myself is that I had to be that I had to be the person I was trying to attract. So when I was dating, I looked at myself and I looked at the kind of man that I was hoping to attract. And what I realized, I asked myself, this is the kind of man I'm looking for. And then I asked myself, what kind of woman would he be looking for? And am I that woman? Because we sit back and we say, well, I'm looking for a real man, Well, what is a real man looking for? I think he's looking for a real woman. And then I had to ask myself, well, what is a real woman? What's a real woman? And do I have those qualities? And I thought, well, I think a real man is looking for a woman who has her emotional self under control, who isn't all over the place, who isn't highly dramatic, who doesn't have a lot of negativity in her life, who has the major pieces of her life together as far as career and friendships and her finances. There were a lot of things I had to look at in myself and not just think, oh, I'm so fabulous and where are all the guys? I had to look at myself and ask myself, what are these guys looking for? Right? And do I have the qualities he would be looking for? So let's see here. Charlene, hi, Charlene, says an empty profile. So Charlene, I know many couples who are together and with really great guys who wrote nothing in their profile. So I'm going to challenge that. They were wonderful men. Sometimes it turned out that the guy had just put up his profile and he hadn't had time to write anything. It also happened that some of the guys were not great writers, and so they didn't write anything. They felt like if a woman wanted to get to know them, they would ask. So I encourage my clients to look at the photographs and see, is this a nice man? Does he look super arrogant and self-absorbed in his photos? Or does he look like a really great guy? If he does, drop him a line and just say, hey, I noticed that your profile section is empty, and I'd love to know a little bit more about you. Charlene also says all negative lists, what they don't want in a person instead of what they do. I think that's a good one, Charlene. That's a deal breaker for sure. A deal breaker for sure. Dorothy wrote, I've been on Christian Mingle. Is this safe? I'm so picky. I pass most up on there. Well, Dorothy, I think you have to know on the dating sites, the number one scam of all the ways that people get scammed today is with like sweetheart swindlers, online dating scams with guys who pretend to be someone they're not, and then they ask for money and all. So my suggestion is to go online and read up about scammers and how they operate, because there are very classic ways that these men do it. And a lot of times they are in, I can't think of the African country. There's a country where they're mostly located, and there's actually whole networks of people who scam and pose and steal profile photos from other men and then pretend to be someone they're not. The number one rule, it doesn't matter how long you've been communicating with someone, you never, ever, ever want to give them money for any reason. And they will give you stories and they'll spin all kinds of tales, and they will send you gifts. They'll even send you gifts, or they'll say, I have all this money and I'm going to deposit it into a bank account, and I want you to take out your percentage and then send me the balance. And I mean, all kinds of stuff, but do not ever send somebody money under any circumstances. But yes, being online is safe. 90% of my clients meet their partners online, and I met my husband online. It's a wonderful tool. It really is. It's like online dating is like a virtual matchmaker, right? It's a virtual matchmaker. Marcia, hi, Marcia. Marcia's a listener, and she says, when he stops going way out of his way for me, it becomes all about them. I let that happen. Must stop overlooking warning flags. So, Marcia, I can go out on a limb here and challenge you a little bit. You may be picking the wrong men. So what happens is with men who are avoidant or have intimacy issues, they will come on hard and fast and strong in the beginning. They will really knock you off your feet. And then when you start to attach to them, they start pulling away. So when women work with me, when they do my 12-week emotionally naked dating coaching program, and if you're interested in learning more about that, you can go to lisashield.com. You'll find the link to watch my presentation. I have a wonderful uh, free 45-minute eye-opening presentation that you can watch for free. But what often happens is we're picking the wrong guys. We're falling for the wrong ones over and over again. And you need to know what those warning signs are. And you also need to know how to spot the great guys, the really, really, really great guys, right? They can be sitting down in front of you. And sometimes the good guys, come across as a little boring in the beginning. The other thing you need to be careful of, and I am not saying that you are doing this, but most of my clients are doing it without even knowing this. You may be saying things in a way that push these men away. So it is very, very important when you're asking for what you want and need from a man or in a relationship that you do it in the right way. Men are wired, they're hardwired to dig their feet in and get belligerent and obstinate when a woman tells them what to do. So there's a right way to ask a man for what you're looking for and a wrong way. And if you do it in the wrong way, men will get fed up or they'll pull away or they'll lose interest. So there's a lot to learn about this that a lot of women don't know. Dorothy said if they don't have too much on their profile, maybe they don't surf much. I guess you're a surfer. Or look for other women possibly. Okay. Debbie, hi, Debbie. Nice to meet you. If they do or promote drugs, it's a deal breaker. If they won't give a way to find out more about them. Yes. So these are great. These are great. So look, let's talk about drug use or even smoking pot, if that's an issue, right, for you, if that's a line that you draw. So if you have a core value around something, so let's say that you have like a zero, tolerance for drugs. If that is a core value for you and that is something that is an absolute no, then that's a deal breaker. So I have a very dear friend who her mother's an alcoholic and she knows that she cannot be around men who drink a lot. She can't. It is a deal breaker for her. She tried it in her last relationship and it just doesn't work for her. And going forward, she is going to look for someone who doesn't drink at all, or drinks very, very little. This is a core value for her, and that is something she knows she cannot live with, right? So if they won't give a way to find out more about them on Facebook, etc. So some people don't want to be your Facebook friend. If they're just getting to know you, they may not want to friend you on Facebook, but there should be some kind of social media presence, some way to find, to learn a little bit more. And if it feels like they're hiding, and especially Debbie with Facebook, that can be a deal breaker, because they may have pictures of themselves up with a girlfriend or whatever that they don't want you to see. So they might be hiding something. And while I don't, think that you should just friend anybody on Facebook, I do think it is very, very important that people not hide things. Once you're in a relationship, unless you just use Facebook strictly for business, I think it's important that people who are in relationships are willing to friend each other and be an open book when it comes to those things. Hey, Stephen, it's great to see you. He says people want you to get off the website or the apps right away. So, I mean, interestingly enough, Stephen, my husband and I, we got off the apps right away. I mean, we weren't on apps. We were on, I don't know that we got off. Want you to get off the website. Got it. Got it. Got it. Yes, I agree with you. Sorry, I misread that. Scratch what I said. I agree with you. When somebody wants to get off the website or the apps right away, they're jumping into something too quickly, and that's not good. In fact, when I coach women, I advise them to date several people at once, not jump into anything. And if somebody is pushing them to get off the apps, it's not good, because that could be a love bomber, somebody who has intimacy issues, or an anxious dater. Not good. So you do not want to jump off the apps too quickly. You want to take your time getting to know someone. And I would actually say that you want to spend a minimum of 6 weeks getting to know someone. Katie said, what are questions to get to know someone better? I've been seeing someone for 2 months now and I want to know him better, but I feel like I never know what to ask and blank. Katie, one of the things that I teach the women I work with is, if you know that a guy is interested in something or there's a topic of conversation, instead of going from question to question to question, you actually want to pick one subject and go deeper with it. So you want to say, like, let's say, he likes cars, he's really into cars, or he likes to play football. You would want to ask him questions that would keep taking that one topic deeper. What do you love about playing football? And you can actually play dumb. I know nothing about football, so I'm not a big sports fan. But if I were on a date with a guy, I would be like, okay, wow, it sounds like you really, really, really like football. Tell me more about that. Like, what do you love about it? What really turns you on about it? Is it just that you blank out and you get to zone out? Or, do you love the strategy? Does it feel really strategic? Is it exciting for you? So I would just take one topic and keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into that topic, and not just, well, where did you go to school? And what do you like to do for fun? And how many brothers and sisters do you have? Take a subject, even if he saw a movie over the weekend and he says, hey, I watched the new James Bond movie over the weekend. What did you think? I don't know. I kind of thought it was lame. Really? What was lame about it? Like, tell me why you thought it was lame. And what is your favorite James Bond film? Which is your favorite? Why is that one your favorite? Who's your favorite James Bond? So you can take one topic and really delve into that subject instead of skipping around. Hello, Dawn. It's great to see you. It's been a long, long time. Dorothy says, where did you find your man? What dating site, if you don't mind saying? So I actually, Dorothy, I get asked this question all the time. First of all, I'm Jewish and I met my husband on JDate. I wanted to date Jewish men. My first husband was not Jewish, and I thought I'd give it a try, because even though I'm not religious, I thought it would be a great thing to try out. And the truth is, I felt like the right Jewish man who wasn't super religious like me would be a great fit for me. So that was great. It really was smart. JDate has changed a lot over the years, so it's not that, it's not as good anymore. Match.com bought it out. But I have clients who have met on every single site. Every single site. There's a great joke. It's not about the dating site. Like, everybody thinks, oh, I have to find the best dating site or the right one or whatever. It isn't true. You need to be the right person. You need to know what to look for in a partner. You need to have your act together. And then you're going to be able to spot a great guy when you meet him. But it has little to do with the site itself. all that matters is that, you're getting hits on the site and that there's a good amount of, of men on the site. So like, there's a great joke about there's this girl, this woman, and she's walking down the street and she runs into her sorority sister from college, and she's blown away. She's like, "Oh my God, I haven't seen you in so long. You look amazing. What have you been doing?" And the other woman, her former sorority sister, says, "You're not going to believe this, but I met my guy. I'm engaged. We're getting married next week." And the first woman says, "Where did you meet him?" And her friend says, "You're not going to believe this, but we met on the street." And her girlfriend says, "What street?" As if she's going to go hang out on that same street because that's where all the great guys are. And that's the same as what dating site. It's not the dating site. If you haven't found your guy, the first thing you have to do is look at you. You got to look at yourself. You can find good men anywhere, but you got to be working on yourself. You have to be doing the work on you so that you can become a more attractive partner. So, Dorothy, I think you have to. I do these lives every Monday at 11:30 a.m. Mountain Time, and I also do one with my husband on Sundays at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. So my husband Benjamin and I do a live, and that one is called Getting Inside the Right Male Mind. But I also suggest that you check out my podcast. So, and actually that's where you can get all of these. So my podcast is called Dating Without Drama. And you can subscribe to it, you can rate it and like it. And that's the best way to find me, because you can listen to my podcast. It's on Spotify or Audible or Apple. So you can find it anywhere you get your podcasts. I think there's a few other platforms too that we're on. And my lives, the best one of all, the Sunday, the one podcast that we release, the Sunday one, is called Getting Inside the Right Male Mind. And my girlfriends listen to it with their husbands. I mean, lots and lots of my former clients, they listen to it with their boyfriends. So that one with Benjamin is for both men and women. Everybody seems to love that podcast. Let me see here. All right. So, yeah, I guess any more comments, any more questions? So back to deal breakers. I'm going to sum this up. The only true deal breakers, let's talk about that. So in my course, when women do my course, one of the biggest pieces of this whole course is coming up with something I call your final five. Your final five are the 5 qualities you must have in a partner, or you cannot date him. These 5 qualities are not something you pull out of thin air or make up. These 5 deal breakers are based on your past, your history. They are the 5 qualities you have sacrificed or compromised on in your past. So if you dated men who didn't have their finances together and you wound up supporting several of your exes, if you kept attracting emotionally unavailable men, if you attracted men who were I don't know. I'm not thinking right now, but you have to think about the things. We do a long exercise in the third week of my course that helps the women get crystal clear on what these 5 deal breakers are. And that's it. They get to write a wish list, and the wish list is the 10 things that they would like to have, but these are more negotiable. So maybe they want a guy who is into sports, or they want a guy who likes to surf, or they want a guy who doesn't have children, right? They can then put those things on their wish list, but their final 5, their 5 deal breakers are based on their past. They're based on the things they compromised in the past. So I can tell you what my final 5 were, if you all would like to hear that. So when I looked at my history and I looked at the repeating patterns from my past, and I decided that I was going to break those patterns, I picked the 5 qualities that I had compromised that I knew I could not live without. So the first one was, I wanted a man who could play at my level, and that meant financially. I had chosen men in my past who didn't have money, and I supported them. I did that because I was insecure. I didn't think a man would want me for me, so I found men who wanted me for my money. But that didn't work. And so I made an agreement that going forward, I would only date men who were on my level financially. They didn't have to have as much money as me, but they needed to be able to support themselves and be able to afford to do the kinds of things that I wanted to do, like travel or go to a nice dinner or eventually buy a home, right? So that was number 1, a man who could play on my level. The second thing I was looking for was a man who took personal responsibility for himself and his life. And that means that he was accountable for his part in things that went right or wrong in his past relationships and in the course of his life. My ex-husband and my father were both pathological liars. So I needed a man who took responsibility, who looked at his life and didn't lie or cheat or steal his way through life, but who took personal responsibility for himself and his life. I also wanted a man who walked his talk. Again, whose words and actions aligned, because my ex-husband made promises to me that he didn't keep. And so I had to have a man who was a man of his word. Another one, I'm trying to think of all 5. Another one was, oh boy, why am I drawing a blank now? I wanted a man who would be my greatest teacher. So all my life, I had picked men where I thought that I was smarter or more evolved than them, like more spiritually evolved, more woke, which was all bullshit. That was just my ego. But I didn't feel that they were as spiritually savvy as me. And I felt like I had the upper hand. And of course, again, I did that because I felt like I had more power and control over them, and I was smarter than they were, and I knew more. Well, that was all my ego talking, right? And so in order for me to be with a man who was my greatest teacher, I had to be willing to humble myself. I had to be willing to admit to my own imperfections, that I didn't have it all together. And I wound up attracting a man who is really the smartest man I know, right? He is the most evolved and put together man I've ever met. So Dorothy said, I don't want to date men who have children because I've dealt with this before. I felt their family was worth more to them than me. So Dorothy, that's okay. That can be a value for you, or that may be one of your final 5. If you took a back seat to a man's children, and going forward, you realize that you don't want a man who has children, that's okay. That can be one of your deal breakers. I didn't want to date men with children either. I don't have kids. I am not good with kids. I wish I could say that I was. I think they're really cute, but I don't relate to them. I just have no affinity for children. I'm great with teenagers and people who are older. So I get it. That's okay. That can be a deal breaker, especially if you've been down that road. And very often, by the way, it is better for people with children to date other people with children, because as a woman who's never had to sacrifice for kids, I don't know, I'm making the assumption, oh, you have 2 children. Huh. I was making the assumption that you didn't have kids. Well, you have to make a choice. It's sometimes better as a parent to date somebody else who also has kids and understands that. Sometimes someone who doesn't have kids doesn't necessarily understand what it's like to have kids. I don't know. You get to create your own reality, Dorothy. You get to create your own reality. Maybe maybe you'll find a man who doesn't have children of his own, who is a wonderful, example to your kids. That's okay. You get to choose what's right and what works for you and doesn't work for you. This is your life. This is your reality. I think it is very, very important that we know what we want, that we learn through experience, and that we stand in our truth. For me, I didn't want kids. And thank God, like neither my husband or me, neither one of us have kids. Neither of us, no kids. And it was one of the things that brought us together. It was one of the things it was one of our bonds, was that we both were, neither one of us wanted kids. And that was, Benjamin would have dated me if I had grown kids, but he wouldn't have raised young children. And he knew he didn't want that. And that's okay. I mean, all we needed to know was that there were other people out there like us, right? We weren't alone, and that we could find a person that was, that had similar values. And the truth is, the clearer I got on what I really had to have, we are so aligned. We're so aligned, in what we want, in who we are. It's extraordinary. And part of this too, Dorothy and everyone else who's here, is that the more I was willing to hold for what I knew I needed. And you must understand, I wasn't trying to get my needs met from someone else. I wasn't trying to get a man to fulfill me or make me happy or, anything. I wasn't trying to get anything from anyone, but I wanted a man who would be kind and loving and who would reciprocate my generosity and my kindness. And, I was looking for reciprocity in a relationship, but I had very, very few rules and regulations, and yet I had very high standards. And that's this is like a really delicate balance, right? I had high standards. I knew exactly what would work and what wouldn't work for me. But at the same time, I wasn't judgmental. I wasn't angry at the men who couldn't give me what I wanted. I wasn't willing to stick around and try to squeeze blood from a turnip, I just was willing to date and keep going. And I don't know if some of you know this. I went on 96 first dates in 2 years. And we are talking about first dates, not second dates, not third dates. Out of all of those men, I only went on 2 second dates. out of the whole 96, I only went out with 2 of those men more than once, and then my husband. But the difference was I wasn't in a rush. I wasn't in a hurry. I knew I wanted something extraordinary, and I believed it was out there. I knew it was, and I knew I wasn't going to settle. I was willing to go on as many dates as it took to find him. And I had 5 deal breakers. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, Dorothy, if you're new, honey, go to lisashield.com and watch my presentation. It's 45 minutes. I think you'll really love it. I have to get going. I'm Lisa Shield. This has been Lunch with Lisa. Please come back and see me again. Or even better, go to Spotify or Apple or Audible or anywhere where you get your podcasts and look for Dating Without Drama. We do 2 episodes a week, one with me and my husband and Lunch with Lisa. And also rate and like the podcast, tell your friends about it. And if you have any topics that you want me to cover on this or the one that I do with my husband, Benjamin, please just drop me an email. You can send that to dwdpod@lisashield.com. So dwdpod@lisashield.com. And I will take all of your suggestions to heart. We will put it on our calendar and we will do a whole episode just on your topic. All right, everybody. Love to you all. Great to see so many new people here today. Please tell your friends about the podcast and I will see you soon. You can also check me out at lisashield.com. That's where you can see my free 45-minute presentation. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next Monday. Bye-bye.